Try this again. No?
My teaching metaphor, September 1st, 2008. Teachers must be a constant gardener, a constant watchdog over their students. A gardener minds their flowers, but a teacher is responsible for a much bigger and more precious garden. They don't fear the dirt and mud surrounding them or the back-breaking work to attain that moment of perfection. They must use the tools available to them, whether it is Miracle-Gro or their own hands. They recognize the beauty in the differences amongst pansies, daisies, and tulips, and strive to know the particulars of each. A teacher watches for the influences in a student's life, knowing which weeds to pull and which weeds are too close to touch. They must be mindful of thorns, and remember that every rose truly does have its thorns. Being pricked once doesn't mean you uproot the rose bush and plant a new flower. Although the new flower might be easier, it won't have the beauty of that rose. They cultivate their flowers, watch them grow and mature, and lead them with the tools to return next year just as prized and beautiful as before.
And so I wrote my first metaphor after I had no teaching experience, no classroom experience. I hadn't been in the classroom at all. And when I look back, I see it as an enthusiastic first try, maybe a little bit naive, not really knowing any teaching methods or some of the realities of teaching. But I really, as I look back, I want to keep that idea of students being individuals and you having to kind of cultivate their knowledge and kind of work with the individual differences of your students. But I hope to address some of the realities that I learned in my second teaching metaphor.
Teaching metaphor, part 2, December 1st, 2008. Teachers are 5-star chefs trying to prepare a 5-course meal for very picky diners. They have to satisfy a variety of tastes and individual habits. They work with the ingredients they have to create a quality sauce. Although they labor intensively to find the right ingredients to make a recipe come together, they sometimes fail at this extraordinary task. Despite the best ingredients and careful planning, sometimes a recipe doesn't mesh. It is at these times when even the most skilled of chefs realize that some recipes must be thrown away. Even the master chef must continually evolve and develop new and better recipes to engage their audience. While the chefs labor away, the diners aren't always pleased with their meal, and almost none of them bother to thank the chef. It is only later, when reflecting, that these diners realize the love and care that went into creating each exquisite dish.
And so my second teaching metaphor I wrote after I'd had my early field experience. And so I was able to address some of the realities of teaching, like lessons don't always work and you sometimes have to readjust them. But now that I look back on it, I feel like it might have been just a little bit too cynical. I was having some of the negative aspects of teaching, such as copying and just observing lessons without the positive things, such as being in front of the classroom and seeing how you shape your students' lives. And so I think that that kind of rubbed off on me, and I don't believe that you can just throw out a recipe. I think you can tweak it and go back to it, but some of those things I've changed my beliefs about. And so I was hoping to capture some of that early enthusiasm I had that I think I kind of lost in my second attempt in this third one. So here's my third.
Metaphor, part 3, April 24th, 2009. Teachers are architects and students are the builders. Working together, they will build a house or finish a project. Teachers must lay out the plans, but students are responsible for building the house. Workers without a blueprint will struggle in vain to build a house, and a blueprint without workers is worthless. Of course, there are scaffolds to hold up any project, just as there are scaffolds to help all learners. There are numerous ways for our students to excel within our plans, and there are numerous job opportunities within the building of a house. Some students specialize in roofing, while others place the foundations for a project. All roles are important and necessary for the project to succeed. A house becomes a shelter, a protection from some of life's harshest elements, just as an education provides a protection from the harshest elements of society. Although the architect has the overarching vision and the workers do the grunt work, everyone is striving towards a larger goal. Everyone works together to construct meaning and together craft a final project we can all be proud of. My teaching metaphor.
And so that's the last one that I wrote after my student teaching experiences. And I really think that it kind of has the most accurate portrayal of what I believe about teaching and my teaching philosophy. I realized that I hadn't given students enough credit throughout my metaphors, but that they need to be an integral part of this process. And so that's why in my last teaching metaphor, I make them so central. And I might be the architect, I might have these plans, but they've got to carry them out. They have to have a role in this too. And so I also wanted to go back and include some of those individual differences, that there are different types of intelligence, and our students might have different things that they specialize in, but we're all kind of working together for this overarching goal. And so I don't think that it's complete. I hope that my teaching metaphor will continue to evolve as I evolve, and I think that some of these things that I've shared, such as blogs and the weekly logs, will help me get there. And I hope that when I have my own classroom, I can continue that process of reflecting weekly like that. So, I believe that teachers always have to be developing and growing as part of their profession. When I stop growing, I'll know that it's time to stop teaching. And so I kind of wanted to include in these last couple of slides just where I want to go. And just that's the idea that I hope I can become an advocate for my profession and continue that process by actively becoming involved in these two professional organizations that I belong to, the National Council of Social Studies and the Student Virginia Education Association, which is part of VEA. And then really hoping that I can kind of share my insights into teaching with others and then get their experience and knowledge as well. And my hope is that I will become a nationally board certified teacher one day and continue my education in a variety of fields.
Thank you. Can you pull up your the electronic portfolio again and then share with us a little bit about some of the INTAS standards that you've got? And you can choose, 2 or 3 of those just to move through and explain how you've met those standards, please.
Okay, so Principle 7 is all about planning instruction, and I chose that one because that's one of my favorite parts of teaching is planning. I love developing an activity and seeing how students will carry it out. But I didn't always start so strong. I started with this 10-minute lesson, which you kind of saw in some of the other presentations, and it's really kind of a weak first attempt for me. The objectives aren't really concrete. There's, I don't include the materials. I mention what they are, but I don't include them. And so there's no real way that anybody else could follow this kind of plan. And then I got a lot better at that as I continued to evolve in teaching and including things like what's the purpose of this? Why are we having this lesson? Having really concrete guiding questions and objectives that I wanted to follow and having them tied to the procedure so that you could see objective 2 and this is how I'm going to carry it out. And then we added another layer to this by involving unit plans, and I did a very early unit plan where I kind of lost a lot of the creativity that I had developed with my lesson planning. The early unit plan kind of falls back on those standards like tests and quizzes and journals, but without some of that creativity that I had developed as part of my lesson plans. And so then I was able to go from there into developing a solid unit plan that outlines creative activities, that goes through 5 lessons and kind of ties them all together and does a lot more of the things that I believe about students being the center and constructing their own knowledge. So this one was about World War II. And I had a lot of more images, a lot more things that students were doing as opposed to just giving them a quiz or a test. So that's the reason that I like 7, because you can see so much growth. But I guess another favorite of mine is in Task 1, because you get to show off how you know your discipline and how you know your content. And I did graduate last year with a history degree, so I enjoy learning about that aspect of my education. And so I have the senior level topics paper that I did all of the research that I had in undergraduate to kind of prove that I can do history and not just teach it. So that's in Task 1. I also include political science and my Asian Area Studies minor because those were areas that I also